Hello everybody and welcome to Corepunk. This is a brand new MMO that's just entered its early access stage a few days ago. Corepunk is an action MMO that has a very unique aesthetic that mixes magic and technology, and interestingly it uses a MOBA style movement and combat system sort of like Albion Online. In this video I'm going to talk about all the things that are good or bad about this game before its full release, so you can decide whether this is the next big MMO for you. As always, feel free to skip ahead to the sections you care the most about, and make sure to subscribe to my channel below for more Corepunk and for more MMO related content. Alright, let's start where all MMOs start and talk about character creation. So the first step in creating a character or a hero in this game is to select your culture and class. Now the way that this works in Corepunk is a little interesting. Each culture acts sort of like a class and comes with 3 different weapon masteries or subclasses. Right now in early access we have 3 different classes to choose from: warmongers, champions, and bombers. Remember, there are 3 subclasses to each class. Now we'll talk more about each specific class and each subclass in a bit, but you should know that your character is only going to be locked into a class. You'll be able to switch between subclasses pretty freely later on. So once you've chosen a class and a starting subclass, you get to customize your character. Now the customization options are pretty bland. There's a good variety of skin colors, which is great, but there aren't that many choices beyond that. I would definitely have liked to see more options for hair and face customization, and maybe even more interesting customization options with things like tattoos and scars. Unfortunately, the only real silver lining for this system is that you're probably not going to be stuck on that character creation screen for very long like in some other MMOs. Okay, so you've got a character, but let's not waste any time here and dive in and talk about the class system. Okay, so like we just talked about, the only real choice that you get locked into in this game is your culture. You can think of your culture almost as if it's just a class. Each culture, each class, has 3 subclasses. Now in early access right now, we have access to 3 classes. The first is Warmonger. This class has 3 subclasses: Legionary, which is a melee tank; Commando, which is a ranged DPS; and Shaman, which is a melee support. Then we have the Champion class, which has the subclasses of Destroyer, which is a melee DPS; Ranger, which is ranged area of effect DPS; and Defender, which is a melee tank. The last class available in early access right now is the Bomber. This has the subclasses of Blast Medic, which is a ranged support; Grenadier, which is a ranged DPS; and Infiltrator, which is a melee DPS. Now there are 3 more classes that have been confirmed that we have the details of, but they're not available right now. However, they will be available when the game releases fully. The first of these is the Paladin class, which has the subclasses of Hand of the Light, which is a hybrid melee DPS support; Cleric, which is a melee support; and Crusader, which is a tank. Then we have the Pain Reaper, which has the subclasses of Pyromancer, which is a ranged DPS; Soul Leader, which is a melee DPS; and Warlock, which is a hybrid ranged DPS support. Finally, there's the Mercenary class, which has the subclasses of Sniper, which is a ranged DPS; Engineer, which is a melee DPS; and Berserker, which is also a melee DPS. Now, if you're paying attention and you haven't fallen asleep by now, you'll have noticed that a lot of these subclasses fill the same role. And they do, but they fill it in very different ways. They've actually done a fantastic job of giving each class and each subclass a unique playstyle. So even if you want to be a tank or you want to be a ranged DPS, you actually have a lot of variety and many different options you can go with. Now, this is important. You're going to be locked into the class you choose when you create your character, but later on, you're going to be able to switch between subclasses pretty freely. This is also a great system because that means that you can switch things up if you ever get bored in a specific role. All in all, the class system and the classes and subclasses themselves are pretty great. I really like what they've done with it. Each class brings something new to the table and they're all actually really fun to play. Okay, so you've got a character and you've chosen a class and maybe even a subclass, but you still need somewhere to go. So let's talk about the world. Okay, takes a unique approach to the genre when it comes to its world. Instead of going for the typical fantasy genre or even the less common sci-fi genre, it's opted for a mixture of steampunk, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, mana. Basically, if there's a genre that ends in punk, Corepunk has elements of it. Now this creates a very unique world to explore that feels kind of brand new. I mean, let's be real. We've all played so many fantasy MMOs by now that honestly a lot of the worlds in them kind of just blend together. Corepunk moves away away from that and into a whole new genre. And because of this, its world, to me, feels much fresher and much more interesting to walk around in because it feels like I'm actually exploring something for the first time in a long time. The graphics are a bit simplistic, but they're consistent, and honestly, they work really well with the gameplay, and all in all, the aesthetic of the game is really nice to look at. However, I do have a couple of complaints. The first is that the camera is way too zoomed in. The maximum amount you can zoom out is still really close to the ground. I can pretty much only see like 3 meters from my character. This is kinda silly. First of all, you've created a great detailed world and you refuse to let me see more than a tiny square of it at a time. But even beyond that, it's just super annoying in general to play with. You have to click more to move and you can't even see enemies that aren't directly in front of you. The second issue is that the quests in this game are sometimes unreasonably vague. Now, I get the idea of a game that doesn't hold your hand and asks you to figure things out on your own. I get it. The problem though is that some of these quests have taken this concept so far that the only way to figure it out is to either wander around aimlessly until you stumble upon the solution, or ask someone who's already done it or look it up online, which would then defeat the purpose anyway. There's a balance to be struck here, and trying to do some of these quests is like looking for the lost city of gold. In fact, that actually might be a little bit easier because at least you know kind of a general area to look at. Now, all that said though, most of the world is actually really cool and genuinely interesting. So despite my complaints, the world is pretty good. Okay, the world is great, but at its core, the game is all about one thing, and that thing is movement and combat. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the control scheme in this game is MOBA-like. So it's going to be similar to games like League of Legends or Dota, or if you're in the MMO genre, Albion Online. This means that you're going to be clicking to move and using keyboard keys like Q, W, etc. for skills. This is definitely going to be off-putting to some people, and for the others, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve. It's not bad though at all. You'll never catch me playing League of Legends, but I've tried it, and I've played a lot of Albion, and this control system is actually really fun once you get used to it. Plus, I really like Arcane, so, you know, there's that. Now, while the MOBA system is mostly good, one thing that kind of sucks is that you can't rotate the camera. This means that the orientation of the game is fixed. This can be kind of annoying when exploring and even during combat, but for the most part, it's not too bad, and it's something you can definitely get used to. Okay, so once you've got the hang of movement, combat works pretty much the same way. You can click on an enemy to attack them, click on a different one to switch targets, and use your keys to activate skills. Now, some skills will activate on the spot, and some, particularly ones that move you or do area of effect damage, will require aiming with your mouse. This is also pretty seamless and pretty easy to do. Now, consistent with all the other games that use this MOBA system, the game as a whole mostly has action combat, with the only tab targeting coming in the form of target selection. It's a tried and true and tested system, and it works as well here as it does in every other game, so you'll hear pretty much no complaints from me. Again, if you're not used to it, it will take a little bit of getting used to, but once you've gotten the hang of it, it is still just as fun as any other MMO, with the only exceptions being some games like Blade and Soul or Black Desert Online, which are pretty much known for their amazing combat systems. Okay, so the movement and combat, once you do get used to it, works really well and seamlessly. That's not the only thing you can do in this game. So let's talk about trade skills. Okay, so trade skills in Corepunk are basically your professions or life skills or whatever you call them in other MMOs. They're the skills that you would use to both collect and craft things. This system in Corepunk is divided into 2 parts. The first is called gathering. Now, there are 4 gathering skills you can level in Corepunk. These are mining, logging, herbalism, and butchery. These are pretty much the skills that you would use to go out into the world and collect various materials, from ore to plants to meat. Once you've got the materials, you can come back and use one of the 4 crafting trade skills. These are mysticism, weaponsmithing, construction, and alchemy. These pretty much allow you to create a bunch of different items, from weapons to skill runes to potions. Now, there is one other trade skill that doesn't belong in either category, and that's cooking. I'm not really sure why they excluded it from the crafting category, because it is crafting. Honestly, it feels kind of mean and like they have some sort of beef with cooking, pun intended, but beyond that, it's actually a pretty well set up system. Now, there is one major downside though, and it's that there is no player market market implemented in the game right now. This may come in the future, possibly with the full release, but as of right now, NPCs buy your materials for dirt cheap, basically nothing. So it's not worth selling it to them, so it just feels a bit lame to go out and collect stuff outside of specific quests. So until we actually have a player market, I don't think there's gonna be all that much incentive to even bother with the crafting system unless you need a very specific item for a very specific quest. All that said though, the whole trade skill system is pretty good. It links together well without being overly restrictive, and there's a lot of stuff to gather and craft, which would keep anyone busy for quite a while. Okay, everything so far sounds pretty good, if not great, but there's always a burning question about any new MMO ever. So let's talk about monetization. Okay, so the game is buy to play, with packages starting at $36 and going all the way up to $68. The more expensive a package is, the more cosmetics and skins that come with it, but all the packages give you access to the game itself. Once you're in, you're in. The in-game currency and shop only contains cosmetics for your character, mount, and user interface. That's it. There's no battle pass, no pay for convenience, no leveling packs, nothing. Nada. Zilch. For an MMO that's coming out now, that's kind of unbelievable. Pay to win has spread throughout this genre like a disease, to the point where some people bend over backwards to defend games where you can straight up purchase equipment directly for premium currency like Throne and Liberty. And yet, Corepunk has nothing of the sort. This alone is such a breath of fresh air to me that by itself, the lack of pay to win has instantly catapulted this game into something I genuinely wish to see succeed beyond any other game. Honestly, if you're sitting there doubting me, I wouldn't even blame you. It's kind of unbelievable right now that an MMO would come out with zero pay-to-win mechanics, and yet we have one here. Hopefully though, they maintain this philosophy as they have promised to and don't introduce any pay-to-win in the full release or in future updates, because that would kind of suck. But right now, from what we can see, it has zero pay-to-win. Trust me, I'm in the same boat as you. I couldn't believe it when I heard it, or I couldn't believe it when I saw it, I couldn't believe it when I played it. But it actually has zero pay to win, and that's kind of insane. And there you have it. A quick review of Corepunk's early access. So far, this game has incredible potential to be a massive entry into the MMO genre. Even though it's still in early access, it's honestly already a ton of fun with a really unique world and lots of content. That, combined with the complete lack of pay to win, makes this a very easy game for me to recommend to anyone who loves MMOs. It's not perfect and it's definitely not complete because it's still missing very basic things like a player market, but what we do have is very promising. Either way, I'll definitely be playing until the full release comes out, and when that happens, I'll be playing that too. I'll be in game on day one, and I hope to see you guys there just the same. For more MMO related content and for more Corepunk related content, make sure to subscribe to my channel below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.